Gonitai ki jai, Kishore Kishori ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki jai. So today we are continuing with chapter 36 of Canto 10, and there are several verses that will be covered today. So text 20 all the way through 26. And text 20 is on the board. So we can chant responsively. Pratyate tu devasham. Kamsa abhasya keshinam. Preshayam asahanyatam. Bhava Rama Keshavam. Pratyate tu devasham. Kamsa abhasya keshinam. Presayam asaharyatam. Bhavata Rama Keshavam. Pratyate tu devasham. Kamsa abhasya keshinam. Presayam asahanyatam. Bhavata Rama Keshavam. Please chant. Pratyate tu devasham. Kamsa abhasya keshinam. Presayam asahanyatam. Bhavata Rama Keshavam. Pratyate tu devasham. Kamsa abhasya keshinam. Presayam asahanyatam. Bhavata Rama Keshavam. Pratyate tu devasham. Kamsa abhasya keshinam. Presayam asahanyatam. Bhavata Rama Keshavam. Thank you very much. Oh. Go ahead, please, please. Pratyate tu devasham. Kamsa abhasya keshinam. Presayam asahanyatam. Bhavata Rama Keshavam. So the word for word, pratyate, having left, to them, Devarisha, the sage among the demigods, Kamsa, King Kamsa, Abhasya, addressing Keshinam, the demon Keshi, Presayam Asam, he sent him. Hanyatam, the two should be killed. Bhavata, by you. Rama Keshava, Balaram and Krishna. And the translation for text 20. After Narada left, King Kamsa summoned Keshi and ordered him, go kill Rama and Krishna. And since we're reading all the way through text 26, I'll chant the Sanskrit and read the translation, and there's just 2 or 3 line purport for 2 of the verses. Text 21. Tato mushtika chanura salato shala kadikan amatyan hastipams shavyar samahuyaha bojarat. And the translation for text 21. is the king of the Burges next called for his ministers, headed by Mushtika, Chanura, Shala, and Toshala, and also for his elephant keepers. The king addressed them as follows. That's text 22 and 23. Bo nishamya tam etad Vira Chanura Mushtika Nanda Vraje Kilasate Sutav Anakan Dundu Vi Rama Krishna Tato Mayam Nirchu Kila Nidashitaham Bhavat Byam Iha Samprapto Hanyetam Maila Lilayam. And the translation for text 22 and 23. My dear heroic Chanura and Mushtika, please hear this. Rama and Krishna, the sons of Dundu Vi, Vasudev, are living in Nanda's cowherd village. It has been predicted that these 2 boys will be the cause of my death. When they are brought here, kill them on the pretext of engaging them in a wrestling match. And text 24. Manchaha kriyantam vividham malaranga parishtritaha Pora jana padha sarve ashyantu svaira samyugam mahamatra tvaya badra rangadvari upaniyatam dvipa kuvala pido janite namamahitao. And text 26, the last of the ones we're doing today. Oh, sorry. I read text 25 thinking they were together. So the translation for text 24 is, erect a wrestling ring with many surrounding viewing stands and bring all the residents of the city and the outlying districts to see the open competition. So I'll just do text 25 again so it's not confusing. Mahamatra tvaya badra ranga dvari upaniyatam dvipa kuvalaya pido jahite namamahita. And the translation for text 25. You, elephant keeper, my good man, should position the elephant Kuvalyapida in the entrance to the wrestling arena and have him kill my 2 enemies. And text 26. Arabhyatam danur jagas chaturdashyam yata vidhi vishashantu pasum medyan uttarajaya midhushe. The translation for text 26. commenced the bow sacrifice on the Dasi day in accordance with the relevant Vedic injunctions. In ritual slaughter, offered the appropriate kinds of animals to the magnanimous Lord Shiva. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shah Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitam Shah. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpataribhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namah. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasvaya Bhutale Srimati Rama Padaswami Iti Namine. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasvaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschacha Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, this is King Kamsa speaking, and he's giving a particular order. And this particular order on the part of King Kamsa to Keshi, that he should kill, and the word that was used is Hanyatam, that he should kill Krishna and Balaram. It has a second meaning according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So the second meaning, and of course, I'm not a Sanskrit speaker, but this is the kind analysis of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He acknowledges that it is by the inspiration, he's acknowledging Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that it's by the inspiration of Goddess Saraswati, the goddess of learning, that Hanyatam also means you should meet them, or in other words, you should be killed. So it has two meanings, Hanyatam, but that Keshi should go and kill Krishna and Balaram, but that also he should meet them means he's going to be meeting his death by meeting them. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is kindly acknowledging Goddess Saraswati for allowing him to understand this. So Keshi is said by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur to personify the vanity of political ambition. And we'll come to hear much later on what that political ambition actually is for King Kamsa himself. He wants to be the ruler of the entire earth. And to amplify this inspiration of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Srila Bhaktivinoda says that it is when Lord Krishna, the enemy of Kamsa, decided to go to Mathura that Keshi, who personifies the vanity of political ambition, was killed. So that's the one line that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives in Sri Krishna Samhita, that the killing of Keshi coincided with the time when Krishna had this inspiration to go to Mathura. So at this juncture, King Kamsa is acting on the information he received from Narada Muni. And yesterday we heard what was that information that King Kamsa got from Narada Muni? And this is it. Krishna and Balaram have been living incognito in the care of Nanda Maharaj. All the Asuras, your companions who were sent to Vrindavan to kill different children, were killed by Krishna and Balaram. So he's got this complete revelation from Narada Muni. And as soon as King Kamsa got this information from Narada Muni, he immediately pulled out his sharp sword and he was prepared to kill Vasudeva. That was his first action, because Vasudeva had practiced some duplicity with him. So Narada told him quite plainly and clearly, these are his words, you are to be killed by the 8th son of Vasudeva. That 8th son is Krishna. You were misled by Vasudeva into believing that the 8th issue of Vasudeva was a daughter. Actually, the daughter was born to Yasoda, the wife of Nanda Maharaj, and Vasudeva exchanged his son for the daughter. So you were misled. So he's driving the point home. You were deceived. You were misled. Vasudeva practiced duplicity. Krishna is the son of Vasudeva, and so is Balaram. Being afraid of your atrocious nature, Vasudeva has tactfully hidden them in Vrindavan out of your sight. So these are Srila Prabhupada's, these words that not just uttered come from Srila Prabhupada's paraphrasing how, or I don't know, paraphrasing, but giving the words that Narada gave to King Kamsa. So he was basically telling him, you've got an atrocious nature. And you were misled by Vasudeva. Now, Kamsa, he's a king. So in the royal order, there are certain strictures by which a king has to abide. So there's a Vedic manual called The Way of Kings, and it outlines some of these strictures that a king has to follow as a ruler and being in that position of ruling citizens and all the associated duties with that role. So here's one of the strictures in The Way of Kings that indicates how a king should behave. So I'm quoting, actions that are motivated by over-affection, by arrogance, by selfishness, or by anger should be abandoned. If they cannot be abandoned, they should be delayed. Now, this has significance, this particular stricture for how a king should function, because Narada Muni actually helps King Kamsa to delay this particular action of being prepared to kill Vasudeva by his sword for his duplicity towards him, the king. So Narada actually helps Kamsa to behave the way a king should behave, which means that he shouldn't perform an action in anger. That is not how a king should behave. So Narada assists him by delaying this action that Kamsa was about to perform of using his sword to kill Vasudeva. And he also understands, because he's understanding Narada, that Kamsa's action is motivated by anger, so he pacifies Kamsa. You are not to be killed. You are not to be killed. You are not to kill Vasudeva. Why are you so anxious to kill him? Better try to kill Krishna and Balaram. Sorry, I'm getting very animated here, the poor microphone. So even though the action was delayed, that King Kamsa should not kill Vasudeva, in order to satisfy his wrath, so he didn't let go of his anger, he arrested Vasudeva and his wife and shackled them in chains. So he's still, performing an action in anger, but Narada's helped him to abide by the codes of proper functioning and rulership for one in the royal order, by having him at least not proceed with his action that was motivated by anger to use his sword to kill Vasudeva. Now, Kamsa's other action was to immediately call for the Keshi demon and ask him to go to Vrindavan immediately to kill Krishna and Balaram. So, we heard earlier, however, that King Kamsa was actually asking Keshi to go to Vrindavan to be killed by Krishna and Balaram. This is Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. According to the Sanskrit, this was the actual meaning. Now, going back to the Vedic manual for how kings should be functioning, there's this stricture, and I'm going to read it. When unsure of the best course of action or waiting for the most appropriate time to act, the king should resort to duplicity. He should display one posture while carrying out another. So this is the stricture. A king should function this way while he's considering when's the most opportune time to act. So King Kamsa does indeed follow this stricture, since he is indeed going to have Krishna and Balaram brought to Mathura. So he's going to have his opportune time to act. He's going to bring them to Mathura, but he does resort to duplicity. So he's following the normal codes of a king's functioning. He resorts to duplicity while waiting for that time of Krishna and Balaram to come to Mathura. So Kamsa calls for his expert elephant trainers, as well as the wrestlers, Chanura, Musika, Shala, Toshala, etc. And he tells them, my dear friends, try to hear me attentively. At Nanda Maharaj's place in Vrindavan, there are two brothers, Krishna and Balaram. They are actually two sons of Vasudeva. As you know, I had been destined to be killed by Krishna. There is a prophecy to this effect. Now I am requesting you to arrange for a wrestling match. People from different parts of the country will come to see the festival. I will arrange to get these two boys here, and you will try to kill them in the wrestling arena. So, in terms of wrestling, it's a combat sport, and there's a lot of throwing that goes on, but it's not the purpose of a wrestling match to kill someone. I mean, there may be all sorts of injuries sustained, like fractures and bruises, but the intention is not to kill someone. But this is King Kamsa's duplicity, and he's acting in accord with royal functioning by being duplicitous. He's arranging for, or having his elephant trainers, he's arranging for the wrestling match, and he's arranging for his elephant trainers to kill Krishna and Balaram in the wrestling match. So not just bruise or induce some fractures. Of course, their bodies aren't of that kind, but in the regular wrestling, a combat sport, that's what happens. It's not a case of killing someone. So to be noted, King Kamsa is further acting in accord with royal stricture by making these arrangements. So I'm reading another stricture for somebody who's a king. Action which is undertaken in the company of associates, family, friends, as well as expert and thoughtful persons is considered to be the best. So there's mention. He calls for his ministers, headed by Mustika, Chanura, Shala, and Toshala, and for his elephant keepers. So friends, ministers, He's certainly following royal codes of behavior. And Kamsa also shows evidence of displaying one posture while carrying out another. So again, he's acting in accord with a royal functioning or the functioning of a king. There's an example of him saying, this is Kamsa speaking, erect a wrestling ring with many surrounding viewing stands and bring all the residents of the city and the outlying districts to see the open competition. That was text 24. And then he adds the posture that is actually to be carried out. So again, this is in accord with royal functioning. There's no fault with Kamsa. You, elephant keeper, my good man, should position the elephant Kuvalyapida at the entrance to the wrestling arena and have him kill my two enemies. So he's acting in accord with royal functioning when you're dealing with an enemy. But of course, the enemy happens to be two young boys in this particular case, so that is highly questionable as well. But that will be looked at later on at the time when the wrestling match is happening and what the response is of the audience. But right now, he's acting in accord with the stricture, the royal stricture of, posturing one way, but then actually doing something deceptive at the same time. So Kamsa gives a reason for this arrangement to the elephant keeper. So he explains to his elephant keepers, his friends, "Oh, elephant keeper, place Kuvalyapida at the entrance of the arena to kill my two enemies, Krishna and Balaram, who are not beneficial to me." And the word that was used was ahitau in the text, so they're not beneficial to me. They're not going to bring any benefit to me. So, in effect, King Kamsa has employed a strategy regarding action that is employed by kings. He is redistributing forces and resources. He has employed a strategy or a tactic through manipulating the resources and forces. So he has said, erect a wrestling ring with many surrounding viewing stands and bring all the residents of the city and the outlying districts to see the competition. So that was text 24. So his tactic was to arrange a wrestling match, which Srila Prabhupada, writing in Krishna books, says is still done in northern India, and it's a very popular event. Actually, something personal that makes me laugh still. I had a mother whose favorite activity was watching wrestling matches. I do not know why. I don't know why she found that particularly stimulating, but that was her favorite activity. So anyway, that's a practice apparently in northern India. And the first tactic that King Kamsa used was to keep the elephant Kuvalyapida at the gate of the wrestling arena. And so he's manipulating his resources. He's got his elephant, he's got the wrestling arena, he's going to have his audience, but he's going to position the elephant in a particular spot at the entrance to the wrestling arena. And by way of manipulating that resource, he's going to have him try to capture Krishna and Balaram as they're entering. So even before they're in the wrestling arena, he's arranging his resources that somehow he can try and eliminate his enemies at the entrance. So his second tactic is to have Krishna and Balaram come to the wrestling match, and it's also allowing him to use his resource in a manipulative way, because he's going to have his wrestlers, Mushtika and Chanara, try to kill them in the wrestling arena. So again, he's manipulating things. Because as I mentioned, it's not the usual conclusion of a wrestling match that one of the contestants or either of the contestants is actually killed. That's not the conclusion of a wrestling match. Now, King Kamsa also advised his friends to arrange to worship Lord Shiva by ordering an animal sacrifice and to perform the sacrifice called Chanuryagya. That's the name of the sacrifice. And the sacrifice performed on the 14th day of the moon, i.e. Dasi. So this day is 3 days after Ekadasi. And it's a day set aside for worship of Lord Shiva. Now, Srila Prabhupada explains in Krishna book that the form of Lord Shiva, which is actually a complete form of Lord Shiva, is Kalahairava, is the form that's worshipped by demons. And this is the form to whom animals that are killed before him are offered. So this practice, Srila Prabhupada explains, is still current in one place in India called Vaidyanatha Dham, where demons offer animal sacrifices to the deity Kalabhairava, and it's to this group that King Kamsa belonged. Now, naturally, I found this interesting reading it because it would sort of imply that King Kamsa is following Vedic codes, even in terms of sacrifice. I thought to look at this a little bit closely. Now, going to what Krishna says of persons of a demoniac mentality, he says that they're impudent and they're deluded by wealth and false prestige, and that they sometimes, he says sometimes, perform sacrifices with pride, in name only, without following any rules and regulations. So this is how Krishna defines the sacrifices done by demoniac persons. They aren't actually following rules and regulations. It's just done in name, and it's done with a mentality of pride. And that verse is from Bhagavad Gita 16:17. Atma samvita stabda dantamana madanvita yajante nama yagnaiste dambena vidhi purvakam. So in that purport, Srila Prabhupada paints the picture of the mentality of a person of a demoniac nature. He says they think of themselves as all in all, not caring for any authority or scripture. So a religious or sacrificial rite is performed with that kind of mindset. So that's the mindset by which a demon is performing a sacrifice. They don't really actually care for the scriptures or authority. So Srila Vishwanath, in his commentary to text 26, he gives these words of Kamsa. So Srila Vishwanath always knows the heart of everyone. So here he is giving Kamsa's words. So taking into account what we've just heard about the mindset of a person of a demoniac nature, this is Kamsa's words. For my prosperity, you should behead some goats and offer them to Lord Shiva, Bhuttarajaya, the giver of benedictions. So these are Kamsa's words. So it's not that King Kamsa has a belief in Lord Shiva's authority, but rather he's thinking that the path he's creating is his own path. He's got his plans. He's doing something that will be beneficial for him. And Lord Krishna describes the attitude of the demoniac person. And I'm reading from Bhagavad Gita. Ahankaram balam darpam kamam krodam cha samshritaha mam atmapara deheshu pradivishanto vyasukyakaha. So this is a translation. So this is the attitude of the demoniac person. Bewildered by false ego, strength, pride, lust, and anger, the demons become envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in their own bodies and in the bodies of others, and blaspheme against the real religion. It's Bhagavad Gita 16:18. So it means that the demoniac entity is envious of both scriptures and the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the reason that he has this envy is because he has an attitude, a mindset that is preoccupied with his own prestige. And his whole concern is the accumulation of wealth, and he's relying on his own strength. So that's the focus, the mindset, the attitude of the demoniac person. So no regard for scripture, and certainly even becoming quite envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who seems to challenge his view of himself as being supreme, meaning the demoniac person, in terms of his strength and his wealth and his prestige. So it means that the demoniac entity is envious of both scriptures and the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this indeed is King Kamsa's mindset, because he thinks himself independent and powerful in every action. So I spent some time painting this picture of King Kamsa actually following the strictures for a person in his position. But the mindset, you notice, is one of disregard for any other authority greater than himself. So to this end, taking into account Kamsa's horrendous plans, thinking that he can actually destroy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can appreciate Srila Sanatana Goswami saying that even though Kamsa was astir with hundreds of evil plans and endeavors, one can still address Krishna, and this is how Srila Sanatana Goswami addresses Krishna, which I think is very important, because we've just been hearing all of Kamsa's side of things. This is Srila Sanatana Goswami. He says, he's addressing Krishna, all victory to you. May you use your invincible strength to kill all the demons. And this is particularly in relation to King Kamsa. So I'm ending on that note. If there are some thoughts to add to this discussion.
Thanks, Krsnarcana. Very elaborate, investigation, the whole mood of Kamsa and things like that. I was very intrigued by the what Keshi represents in terms of the aspiration for political powers that. And you draw the comparisons. Part of the class was, when you mentioned that Keshi's, what he represents, then as the class progressed, that was part of, the what you elaborated, Kamsa's political arrangements to hold to power, and but again combined with his demoniac mentality. So I wonder if because Kesi is a demon that represents that obstacle, and on the other hand, when you read the ways of kings, then there is this sort of almost like bona fide arrangement for political maneuvers, and to hold, to maintain power, or to, sort of establish power. So in one sense, it's a demoniac obstacle, and in other sense is something that is that is almost encouraged, to do like lawfully like that, according to the Vedas. So how you deal with this apparent, sort of contradiction thing?
Thank you for pointing out the dichotomy that's there, which was certainly would seem to be highlighted, considering that Kamsa is adhering to, or it's perfectly in order for him to engage in political maneuvering as a king. But on the other hand, there's the problem that the mentality is one that is problematic, because in the manual for the royal functioning, there's other sections on justice and dealing with citizens, etc. And the picture that emerges is certainly that a king is in the mode of goodness. A king has control of his senses, and having control of one's senses is only possible if one is following scriptures, and certainly the very best is engaging in worship of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because then that is where the source of strength is, and that's also where proper knowledge is accessed. So a king who's actually functioning without that stabilizing force of adherence to the scriptures and worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is actually not within the parameters of, on an individual level, being an entity who has control of his senses, or on a broader level, being one who's actually able to show the proper care for his citizens, because he's a person that's functioning according to his wanton desires. It's overriding the duty of putting the care of the citizens first. So immediately you can see that that's a very unhinged position for a ruler. So I think that's how I would respond in a brief way to the very nice dichotomy you pointed out from hearing the class. There's no control, so to speak, and therefore no adherence to proper behavior, and duty will not be performed with the proper priority. So it puts the citizens at risk, and it puts the kingdom at risk, and the individual is also destined for destruction, not having control of the senses. I mean, in that position, it's such a volatile problem. And you see that in contemporary society, any leader that is doing political maneuverings but is not a person that's in the mode of goodness inevitably brings about such destruction. So, yeah, there has to be acknowledgement of a high authority.
Hare Krishna Mataji. I was wondering, what is the significance of the name Anaka, Dundu Vi Anaka, that it refers to others of Krishna. He is also known as, what is they are called? Anaka Dundu Vi. Dundu Vi Anaka.
I don't have that information at my fingertips. Perhaps somebody else remembers.
Say again.
Yes, that's right, the drum. The drum. Do you want to take the microphone, please, Subal?
When he took birth, as far as I remember, I have some recollection.
Mm-hmm.
Dundu Vi is a type of drums that is in heavens. So there were Dundu Vi sounds as he took birth. I think that's what I remember.
Yes, I'm remembering too.
100% accurate on that, but that's what I remember.
Thank you.
To control one's senses is not in the realm of a conditioned soul, because he's conditioned because he's not following we have the our constitutional position and our conditional position. I was reading that in the Bhagavad Gita, and you can't give demons good instruction because they could become angry. But
yes,
I was thinking about a Beatles song that says, "If you keep carrying pictures of Chairman Mao, you're not going to help anybody anyhow." You remember that?
That's very charming.
You say you want a revolution. Do you remember that song? But that just came to mind.
Thank you. It's very charming. Yeah. I think His Holiness Ramapada Swami was mentioning that China is just having a 7-day public festival, and that just like we have Independence Day, or China has 7 days allocated, and is very much connected to the Mao Zedong taking over rulership of the country. So it's still celebrated today. Somehow that ruler has stayed in the history of the people as a positive one.
Hare Krishna. So during Krishna's birth, Krishna informed all the demigods to come, right? Before his birth, all demigods appeared in different places. So the demigods, in other words, they are Krishna conscious. Anybody is demigod, Prabhupada says they are Krishna conscious. Anyone is demigod, is a Krishna conscious. So, but the demigods, they are engaged in helping Krishna. So, before the coming, they are taking birth in different places in Mathura. So, in other words, demigods, in Bhagavad Gita it says less intelligent people worship demigods. But here it says demigods are Krishna conscious. So it's Krishna, they have given them different posts, like demigods. So they are controller of different position. So, another it says that one who has lost his intelligence, he worships demigods. So because anyone is demigod is Krishna conscious, and anyone is worshipping demigod is less intelligent, or his intelligence lost. So a little bit. And one more thing is that divine and demonic qualities, how one develops that. His previous births, or is born in a demonic family, how he accumulates his qualities.
So you were looking at two things. One was what's the position of the demigods in relation to Krishna, And you were pointing out that for his pastimes, many of these demigods actually took positions in Vrajabhumi to assist Krishna. But at the same time, you're reading Bhagavad Gita that, if one worships the demigods, one goes to the planet of the demigods, and it's a lesser form of worship. So the persons that are worshipping demigods are seeing that particular personality as the supreme personality, and it's generally persons who are wanting something in exchange for their worship. So I worship this on this particular day because I know that I'm going to receive this particular prosperity, material prosperity. So, and the demigod is obliged, according to all the codes of religion, to dispense that particular reward or boon or material prosperity to the worshipper who's performed it at the right time, in the right place, in the correct way. So it's a very correct system. It's within religious codes of behavior. Through the worshipper performing that kind of sacrifice, because it's done, if it's done in the correct way with, following religious codes of correct time, place, everything, the person gradually, the consciousness gradually gets elevated. So it's perfectly in order. But Krishna is pointing to the fact that it's better to actually come to the point, or the best form of worship is where you're not actually looking for a reward, because that's on a material level. You actually want to be able to worship the supreme personality of Godhead with all one's heart, and relying on his mercy to conduct one's life. So it's it's a person who's freed themselves of the encumbrance of needing material prosperity. So now how this touches on the position of the demigods, they are close to Krishna. They are there to assist persons in that elevation of consciousness. And that's precisely what they're doing even in Vrajabhumi for his pastimes. They're assisting him according to what he needs. So they're very much aligned with Krishna's system. And then in terms of the other question that you brought up, just remind me again the last part of your question. The development of the qualities. So one doesn't consciously develop demoniac qualities. The entity that has a particular attitude towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the entity that has intelligence that they employ contrary to everything that's there in the Vedas, meaning that everything is done to, here we're hearing of a ruler where it's to increase his own prestige, his own wealth, his own strength. There's no acknowledgement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead or the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in this particular case, the king is so demoniac, he wants to kill the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that isn't so much developed, it's just a continuous degradation of consciousness that goes on by the actions with that kind of mindset and using the intelligence in that kind of way. According to that kind of nature. So it's just like going down and down and down the consciousness. So it's not exactly a development, it's just a degradation of the being that happens. In terms of divine qualities, well, those are bestowed by Lord Krishna. So it's he who ornaments one of his devotees or his devotees through the process of purification. So as one increasingly develops this mindset that one wants to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and there's, sacrifices one has to perform, and sometimes it means putting aside some material desire for a spiritual desire, or one makes choices that are not for some selfish motive, but rather for the purpose of serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there's constant choices that one is making, and the constant deliberate action one is engaging in that's moving in that direction of elevation of consciousness to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead is what Krishna, by his kindness, then bestows some of those extraordinary qualities as ornaments on his devotee. He's so pleased that the devotee comes to naturally seem to develop humility or very good intelligence, or I think self-satisfaction. Those are things that come from Krishna's kindness through the devotee's endeavor and his personal choices, the sacrifices he performs in order to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as opposed to making performing those actions that are in the direction of material, selfish interests. So that's a simple way of responding to the thought you brought up. But thank you for bringing up that dichotomy once again. So if we don't have anything else, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.